The morning sun rose slowly over the California sky, casting a soft golden glow across the neatly arranged white chairs spread over the large ceremonial field as families, friends, and proud officers gathered to witness the commissioning ceremony of the new Navy graduates, each of whom had worked for years to earn the honor of wearing their uniforms. Excitement filled the air, mixed with laughter, camera clicks, and the warm chatter of parents congratulating their children. Yet far away from the joyous crowd, standing alone near the fence, was a man who looked completely out of place, a homeless veteran with a long untrimmed beard, tangled hair, and clothes so worn out that they looked older than many of the officers present. His boots were scuffed, his jacket torn, and as he stood there looking at the ceremony from afar, there was a strange mix of pride and sadness in his tired eyes. This man, despite his appearance, carried years of service in his soul, years no one around him knew about, years full of sacrifice, discipline, and pain. But life hadn't been kind to him after the uniform came off. For reasons long buried inside him, trauma, guilt, loss, he had ended up on the streets, surviving one day at a time. Yet today he came here for one reason, his son. The same son he had not spoken to in nearly 10 years. The same son who believed his father had abandoned the family. And the same son who, despite everything, had made it into the Navy and earned a place in this ceremony. The homeless veteran had spent weeks gathering the courage to come here. And even though he stood far away, fearful of embarrassing his son, he could not stop staring at the young officers lined up, wondering which one was his boy. He clutched a small wrinkled photograph in his hand, a photo of a 12-year-old boy smiling in his school uniform. That was the last picture he ever took of him before everything in life went downhill. As he looked at the photograph and then at the ceremony again, his heart trembled with emotions he had buried deep for years. Suddenly, an officer walking by noticed him and frowned, clearly suspicious. People rarely approached homeless individuals at such elite events, but the officer walked up to him anyway and asked, "Sir, are you supposed to be here?" The homeless man hesitated, his voice rough from years of silence. My son. He's graduating today." The officer glanced at him again, disbelief clear in his eyes, because the man looked nothing like someone who belonged to any of the proud families attending. Still, before the officer could say anything else, a young female officer, fully dressed in her shining white uniform with ribbons and badges pinned to her chest, walked over. She seemed strict, not rude but professional, and the kind of person who followed rules closely. She noticed the homeless man and spoke firmly, "Sir, this event is restricted for guests. You can't sleep around here or wander inside." Her words were not meant to be harsh, but the man's heart sank as if someone had struck him. He looked down, embarrassed, clutching the photograph tightly. The young officer noticed his trembling hands and the old photograph, and something in her expression changed, just a little enough to make her soften her tone. "Who is your son?" she asked. The man swallowed hard. I don't know if he wants to see me, but he's here today. He's commissioning as an officer." The officer raised an eyebrow, trying to understand. "Do you know his name?" He whispered the name with a hesitation that carried both love and shame. The officer's eyes widened slightly. She recognized the name everyone did. That graduate was one of the top performers of the batch. Before she could respond, the ceremony music began, and all the graduating officers marched into the field. Families cheered loudly, cameras flashed, and the homeless man instinctively stepped closer, trying to see. The female officer hesitated, torn between rules and compassion, then said, "Stay here. Don't move." She walked quickly toward the other officers, whispering something to a senior. The homeless man watched nervously. His heart pounded as he scanned the row of graduates, trying to find his son. And then he saw him. Second row, third from the left. Tall, sharp, confident. wearing the same white uniform he once wore decades ago. The sight made his eyes fill with tears. His son looked so strong, so proud, everything the homeless man hoped he would become, even if he couldn't be part of the journey. Memories rushed through his mind, teaching his son how to ride a bike, saluting him playfully when he was little, telling him stories of Navy life. And then the darker memories, arguments, nightmares, losing control. The day he walked out because he believed leaving was better than letting his trauma destroy his family. For years he had lived with that guilt, and now seeing his son in that uniform filled him with pride and unbearable sorrow. The ceremony continued with speeches, salutes, and pledges. The homeless man stood still, his eyes fixed on his son, unaware that people around him kept staring or whispering. Suddenly, after the oath, the new officers were told to approach their families to pin their new rank insignia. The crowd erupted again with cheers as families rushed to their graduates. The homeless man stayed where he was, clutching his jacket, holding the photograph like a lifeline. He had no intention of approaching his son. He didn't want to ruin his moment. But as fate would have it, the young female officer approached his son and whispered something in his ear. The young man's expression froze. He turned slowly, scanning the field as if searching for someone. And then his eyes landed on the homeless man standing alone. For a moment, the world around them went silent. The son stared in confusion. He didn't recognize him at first. But then something clicked. The face, though aged, tired, and hidden behind a beard, had traces of the man he once admired. His eyes widened with shock. The homeless man panicked and quickly looked away, wanting to flee, but his legs refused to move. He felt exposed, ashamed, unworthy. The son hesitated, his breathing uneven, and the female officer whispered, "He said he came to see you." Pain, anger, confusion flashed across the young officer's face. Memories of abandonment resurfaced, birthdays without a father, milestones without support, watching his mother cry late at night. But so did the few precious childhood moments he cherished. After a long pause, he took a deep breath and walked toward the man. Each step felt heavy. The homeless man felt tears burn his eyes as he watched his son approach in full uniform, looking every bit the hero he himself once dreamed of being. When the son finally reached him, he didn't speak. The father tried to say something, his voice shaking. I'm proud of you." His son's jaw tightened. He wanted to be angry, but seeing his father like this, broken, lonely, dressed in rags, crushed something inside him. "Why did you come?" he finally asked. The father's lips trembled. "Because, even if you hate me, I wanted to see you become the man I always hoped you'd be." The son looked down, struggling with years of hurt and the sudden wave of emotions. And then before he could respond, a senior officer approached them, looking strict and confused, and said, "Is there a problem here?" The son stood straight, hiding his turmoil. "No, sir." But in his heart, he knew this moment would change everything. The senior officer walked away after the young newly commissioned officer assured him everything was fine. But nothing inside him felt fine, because the presence of his father, who had vanished from his life like a ghost, was shaking everything he thought he had buried long ago. The homeless veteran kept his eyes lowered. Unable to meet the gaze of the son he believed he had no right to face. And for several seconds, neither of them spoke as the noise of the celebrating families around them faded into a distant hum, leaving only a thick silence between two lives broken apart by time and pain. Finally, the father whispered, "I shouldn't have come close. I'm sorry," and stepped back as if ready to disappear again. But the son instinctively reached out and grabbed his arm, surprising even himself. "Wait," he said, voice low but firm. I just need to understand. Why did you leave?" The father's throat tightened, and he swallowed hard. Looking away as memories twisted like knives inside him, memories of waking up drenched in sweat, screaming from nightmares, punching walls, feeling the walls of the house close in, seeing fear in his wife's eyes and confusion on his young son's face. "I wasn't right," he finally said, voice trembling. "After the war, things inside me broke. I didn't know how to live around people I loved, didn't know how to sleep without seeing the faces of men I lost. I thought, if I stayed, I might hurt you or your mother." The son clenched his jaw, emotion rising in his chest. "So you left us instead? You thought abandoning us would make anything better?" The father nodded slowly, eyes wet. "I know it was wrong. I know I failed you. And I live with that every single day." The son shook his head, pain mixing with anger. "We struggled. Mom cried every night. I worked jobs while studying. I hated you for disappearing." The father closed his eyes as if struck. Every word was a punch to a wound that had never healed. "You have every right to hate me," he whispered. "But I never stopped loving you. Not for a single moment." The son felt his chest tighten. He wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to run away, but instead he just stood there, staring at the man who had once been his hero and then became his ghost. The female officer who had first confronted the homeless man watched from a distance, sensing something deep was unfolding, and without interrupting, she quietly redirected people away to give them privacy. The father wiped his eyes with a shaking hand and forced a smile that broke almost immediately. "You look strong. Like your mother," he said softly. "She raised you well." The son hesitated, then nodded. "She did, but she never stopped waiting for you to come back." This time the father couldn't hide the pain. He looked up at the sky as if hoping the sunlight would burn the guilt away. "I tried," he whispered. "So many times I started walking home. But every time I got close, fear pushed me back. Fear that I wasn't the man you deserved." The son crossed his arms, struggling with conflicting emotions. "And now? Why show up today?" The father pulled out the old photograph, the one he had carried for years like a treasure. "Because this was the last day I could hide. I wanted to see the man you became, even if you never wanted to see me again." The son stared at the photo, his younger self smiling back at him from a past long gone, and something inside him cracked not in anger, but in sorrow. "You should have come sooner," he said, voice barely above a whisper. The father nodded, tears falling freely now. "I know, and I'm sorry for every year I missed." Suddenly, a group of fellow officers approached the son, calling his name, congratulating him, asking about photographs. He forced a smile, trying to compose himself, but his father stepped back again, ready to disappear. "I won't cause trouble," he murmured. "I'll go." But the son grabbed his arm again. "No, stay." The father froze, shocked. "But people are staring," he said. "They'll wonder." "I don't care," the son cut him off. "You're still my father." Those words hit the homeless man harder than any battle he had ever fought. His knees almost buckled, and he steadied himself, overwhelmed by the realization that his son, despite everything, had not erased him completely from his heart. The son turned to his friends and said, "Give me a minute," and they nodded, stepping away respectfully. As the crowd thinned, the son motioned for his father to follow him to a quieter area behind the rows of chairs. They walked in silence, the father taking small, hesitant steps as if afraid each one might be his last before being pushed away. When they finally stopped behind the shade of a tall palm tree, the son exhaled deeply. "So, how have you been surviving?" he asked. The father looked down at his hands, rough and scarred. "Shelters sometimes. Streets most days. I do small jobs when I can. But it's fine, I don't need much." The son frowned, the idea of his father sleeping on concrete gnawing at him. "You served this country," he said bitterly. "And this is what you're left with?" The father forced a faint smile. Life breaks some people more than others. I tried to get help, but I never stayed long enough. I didn't think I deserved it. The son felt a painful pressure in his chest. Why didn't you reach out to me when I joined the Navy? The father shook his head quickly. You were building a future. I didn't want my past to ruin it. The son stared at him, disbelief and heartbreak mixing together. You think you ruin everything. But that's not true. It is, the father insisted. Look at me. I'm not the man you used to admire. No, the son replied firmly. You're just a man life hurt too much. But you're still my father. The father's breath caught, and he wiped his eyes again. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quietly. Just today. Just seeing you. That's enough. The son stepped closer. I don't know if I can forgive you completely. Not yet. But I want to try. The father gasped softly, a broken sound of relief mixed with disbelief. Really? Yes, the son said. Walking away won't fix anything. But maybe staying will. Just then, a photographer approached, asking the young officer to join his group for photos. The son hesitated, glancing between the photographer and his father. Go, the father said gently. You deserve this moment. Come with me, the son replied. The father froze again. I can't. Look at my clothes. I don't care about clothes, the son said. Stand with me, please. Tears streamed down the father's face. Slowly, with hesitation in every step, he followed his son back toward the other officers. People stared, whispered, wondered who the ragged man beside the newly commissioned officer was. But the son stood tall, shoulders squared, refusing to let shame touch him. When the photographer asked, "Family?" the son placed a firm hand on his father's shoulder and said, "Yes, this is my father." The father nearly broke down right there. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a homeless stranger, not as a broken veteran, but as a father. As the photographer captured the moment, the son leaned toward him and whispered, "Don't disappear again." The father nodded, tears falling onto his worn jacket. "I won't." But neither of them knew that an even bigger revelation, one that would change their lives forever, was still waiting to unfold after the ceremony ended. Asterisk. As the ceremony concluded and families began packing up, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the field while the newly commissioned officers celebrated with pride. Laughter and endless photographs, yet amidst all the noise, the young officer stayed close to his father, afraid that if he blinked, the fragile reality of his return might vanish like smoke. The father kept his hands folded tightly, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar warmth of belonging, something he hadn't felt since the day he left home years ago. When the crowd finally began to thin out, the son gently touched his father's arm and said, "Come with me. There's something we need to talk about." The father stiffened, unsure if he was being invited or dismissed. But he followed quietly as the son led him behind the bleachers toward a quieter walkway shaded by tall palm trees. The air smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass, and for a moment, everything felt strangely peaceful. "Dad," the son began, hesitating because the word felt foreign on his tongue after so many years. "There's something I never told you." The father looked at him anxiously. "Anything. You can tell me anything." The son took a deep breath. "Mom passed away 3 years ago." The words hit the father like a physical blow. He staggered back, grabbing the railing for support as tears surged instantly in his eyes. "No, no, don't say that," he whispered, shaking his head violently. "She was strong. She was always strong." His voice cracked, and he covered his face with both hands as his body trembled uncontrollably. The son's expression softened with pain. "She got sick. It happened fast. She kept holding on to hope that you'd walk through the door one day. She never stopped believing that maybe you'd come back. The father's sobs grew deeper, raw, broken, filled with every regret he had tried to bury. "I should have been there," he choked out. "She deserved better. She deserved everything." The son placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "She never hated you. Not once. She wished things were different, but she never blamed you the way I did." The father sobbed harder, the grief pouring out of him like a lifetime of sorrow finally finding a way to breathe. After several minutes, he tried to calm himself, wiping his tears with shaking hands. "I wish I could tell her I'm sorry," he whispered. "I wish I could thank her for raising you." The son nodded slowly. "Maybe the best way to honor her is by not running from your life anymore." The father looked at him, eyes red and swollen. "I don't know if I can fix anything now." "You can try," the son replied. "That's enough." They stood in silence for a moment until the son continued. "But there's more. Something else I need to tell you." The father's heart raced again. "What is it?" The son pulled a folded document from inside his uniform coat and handed it to him. "Before she passed, Mom wrote a letter. For you." The father froze, staring at the envelope as if it were a fragile piece of his lost past. His hands trembled as he slowly opened it and pulled out a paper with familiar handwriting. His breath caught the moment he saw her words. "If you're reading this, it means you found your way back. And if you did, then I want you to know that I never hated you, not for one day. I knew you were hurting. I knew you were lost. I wish I could have helped you carry your pain, but sometimes people break in ways love alone cannot fix. I hope you heal. I hope you forgive yourself. And I hope you try to be a father again someday, because our son still needs you, even if he won't say it out loud." By the time he reached the bottom of the letter, the father was on his knees, crying so hard that his chest shook. The son knelt beside him, putting an arm around his shoulders, and for the first time since he was a child, he let himself hold his father. After several minutes, the older man pulled himself together and looked at his son with new determination. "I want to make things right. I don't know how, but I want to." The son nodded. "Then start by letting me help you." The father blinked in surprise. "Help me?" "Yes," the son replied firmly. "You're not going back to the streets." The father immediately shook his head. "I don't want to be a burden." "You've worked so hard to get here." "Stop," the son interrupted. "You weren't a burden when I was little, and you're not a burden now." The father looked away, ashamed. "I don't belong in your world." "You belong with family," the son touted. "And I'm all you have left, Dad, so please, let me help you." The father swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. What do you want me to do?" "Come with me," the son said. "I'll get you cleaned up, find a place for you to stay, get you into a veteran support program. I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I can promise you won't be alone anymore." The father felt tears spilling again. But this time they weren't from pain. They were from a fragile spark of hope he thought had died years ago. I'd like that," he whispered. "I'd like that very much." The son gently helped him stand, steadying him as if the act symbolized lifting him out of the years of darkness he had lived in. Before they could walk away, the female officer approached them again, her expression soft with understanding. "Is everything okay?" she asked. The son nodded. "Yeah, this is my father. We're working through things." The father gave her a grateful smile. "Thank you for not turning me away earlier." She returned the smile warmly. Sometimes people just need someone to look past what they seem like and see who they are. With that, she stepped aside, letting them walk together toward the exit. As they made their way across the field, the father glanced at his son. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything," the son answered. "Are you proud of me?" The son stopped walking, turned toward him, and without hesitation said, "More than you can ever imagine." The father felt warmth spread through his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. "And I'm proud of you too," he whispered. The son smiled softly, then looped his arm around his father's back, guiding him forward. As they stepped out of the ceremonial grounds, leaving behind years of pain and misunderstanding, the father took a deep breath, the air tasting different, lighter, like the beginning of a second chance he never thought he'd receive. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect, and healing wouldn't come overnight, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't walking alone. And that single truth was enough to start rewriting the story of a homeless veteran, and the son who gave him a reason to return home. Asterisk.